Republicans who will not be voting for Trump this time around. What was the breaking point for you? Comparing his coronavirus briefing ratings to The Bachelor. Was that the one where he lost his chiz at a reporter asking a softball question of what do you say to Americans that are scared? He went on a rant about a terrible reporter he was for asking that and how good his ratings were for these speeches. When he posted a tweet about not going to be a bad president that would go golfing for a month, but that's what he did. Pretty sure he has golfed more than any president in the past. Matt is stepping down. I respect that man more than almost any other. I can't fathom what the breaking point was, and I'm terrified to read the memoir when it comes out. Edit. As this comment has blown up so much, I want to address everyone throwing their issues with Trump at me. We all care about the things that matter to us, and those things are individual to each of us. You fail to see how many of us were voting against Hillary while you were dismissing our issues with her. A friend told my wife, if you don't vote Hillary, you're a traitor to your gender, while completely dismissing the policy issues we had. Being smug, elitist and condescending is exactly what got us here. I've admitted my error, and if you're just going to antagonize, you are part of the problem. Also, thank you for the gold, silver, etc. Exclamation mark. Did you miss what he said about Trump clearing Lafayette Park? Feedlantic. The way he talks to world leaders is an embarrassment to our whole country. Some people are just too dense to see it. I mean, famously the European leaders were mocking him behind his back. I don't know if the rally took place before or after he was elected, but I didn't see it until after. It was the one where he talked about how he hates windmills, and I believe he said he knows more about wind than anybody. Then did a bit about not being able to watch TV because it's not a windy day. That was when I became embarrassed about my vote and started to regret it. It only got worse after that. Those things was hilarious up until you realized that someone that said that could be one of the world's most powerful people. I was raised in an ultra-conservative family. I only started to pay attention to politics during Obama's presidency, which I was promised would result in Sharia law being imposed on America. I saw Fox, my parents, and those around me rail against Obama every day, listing off the various ways he would destroy the country. I cast a vote for Trump knowing that in a blue state it didn't really matter, so I didn't have to question/research it, and figured he would lose anyway, absolving me of any blame for a Clinton presidency. My biggest regret is making the popular vote closer. My family, Fox, and those around me have all completely rejected their values to follow Trump. Every day he does something they vowed Obama would do to ruin the country, and they twist themselves explaining why it's actually a good thing. My good wholesome Christian family members are now some of the most genuinely racist and least intellectual people I know. But there are other siblings like me as well, and they give me hope. It took me about 3 months of being a casual follower of politics to start being involved in local elections, driving an hour plus to vote, and actually paying attention. I've, hopefully, started to make up for my mistake by voting more intelligently in the last primary and having discussions with the siblings that are asking similar questions. I can say without hesitation that people who are voting for Trump are either utterly politically apathetic, formerly me, or filled with hate, whether they think about it or not. He simply isn't an intelligent vote with all we've seen. Edit. Added some context to the first paragraph to clear some confusion. Thank you for your candor. I unfortunately fall into the camp of people who voted for him because I hated Clinton. It's not really a situation of where I realized when I wouldn't vote for him again. It's more like when I realized I ducked up. I can't think of a specific moment, but I think it was the realization that he wasn't just saying things and enacting policies that were opposed to previous Democrat ideas and policies. He was just saying whatever crazy chiz came to mind. He is also a horrid racist and bigot, and honestly not mentally healthy. On the crazy shot list. My mouth dropped the other day when he bragged about not needing a Green New Deal because pollution was way down. Like, are you taking credit for allowing this corona chiz to get out of hand and kill tens of thousands? Like quarantine was your environmental plan? Dude has lost it. This is a difficult question. For context, I'm 22 meters, and 2016 was my first election. Anyway, here goes. I didn't like him when I voted for him. Edit. I supported Kasich in the primary and ended up voting Cruz because he had the best chance of beating Trump in my state of Indiana. I really only chose him because he wasn't Clinton, and as I'm a conservative, there were some things he pushed that aligned with my views. However, since the election I have been progressively less and less impressed with both him and my party. It's hard to point to exactly one thing that pushed me over the edge, but the major events that catapulted me away from him are probably the following. 1. Grab him by the pussy. 2. Mocking a disabled person. My brother has Down syndrome, so this one really gets to me. 3. His tendency to nickname everyone he competes with Lion Ted, Crazy Bernie, Sleepy Joe, Crooked Hillary, Do Nothing Democrats, etc. My dad repeated one of these a while back, and I'll let him know that if he continued to use these terms, I would instantly lose much of my respect for him. 4. His mockery of John McCain. 5. Most of the handling of the impeachment process, and especially Romney's speech in favor of impeachment. 6. His photo shoot in front of the church after tear-gassing the entire place. 7. Perhaps the biggest one is the impact I've seen on the people around me. After the 2016 election, people I had tremendous respect for suddenly became extremely hateful and vindictive. Perhaps it was always there, and I was too young to notice it, but it was striking. More generally, I'm sick of America's leader, and to a lesser extent, its people, being the laughing stock of the world. I'm no fan of Biden, and didn't really like Obama that much either, but enough is enough. In hindsight, maybe I should have realized all of this sooner, but I really wanted to like him. After all, some of the things he had done happened years ago, and I believe people can change. Beyond that, he was the candidate I voted for. I wanted to be right. There were a handful of things he did that I agree with, and I clung to those, hoping that I could stand behind them, if nothing else. But after all this, I could not ignore his transgressions. Barring something extraordinary, I will be voting blue come November. I will not be looking forward to Thanksgiving with my parents this year. Edit. A lot of people have asked how I could vote for him to begin with, since several of my points occurred before the election. I don't really have a good response to this, but I was 18, and my political knowledge came pretty much entirely from my family, who were staunch conservatives, and got me to think that Clinton was basically the worst thing since genocide. So since I agreed with some of Trump's political ideas, I was able to overlook 1, 2, 4 at first in an effort to keep Clinton out of the White House. By the way, I still believe my family are wonderful people, just very misguided on this particular issue. You have a level of objectiveness / self-awareness and nuance that most people never achieve, let alone in their early 20s. I bet we disagree on it, but I respect people like you. When he tweeted about a fake Russian propaganda bullshit article about how the old man that got pushed over by the cops and in the hospital for a week was a spy. Can't even believe how stupid Trump is. Can't believe that people still support him. I think that perhaps for some remaining Trump supporters, they struggle to admit they made a mistake in voting for the guy because they have attached so much of their own ego to the decision. So the continued support is now more about a personal refusal to admit that they were wrong in their character assessment as opposed to a continued genuine belief in the man. I also think that given how many entire families tend to politically align themselves and find it a point of personal pride to proclaim how long they have uniformly and steadfastly supported a certain party, that this also makes it very hard to individually switch allegiances, because doing so can mean alienating yourself from the rest of your family, setting yourself up for unwanted conflict in the process. It can be like losing an actual part of your identity, and very unsettling to your sense of structure and stability in life, making you question everything that you once stood for. A loss of faith in a leader can be a very stressful experience that can have a lot of repercussions in your life, so sometimes it's easier to just try and keep on justifying things and looking the other way, although obviously this can only go on for so long. Trump is so divisive, he is alienating people who have supported Republicans for generations. Deleted. Is that your Bible? It's a Bible. When I realized his words had no meaning You literally can't trust anything he says. It could be blatant lies and he won't care at all. It's dangerous. I was on the executive board of my college's Republican Party organization. It's been a long couple of years. My family and some friends though will still try to justify what he says. Has just trolling the liberals. Has getting back at the fake news. Edit. I commented this further down. I added it up here for more context on my post. The last presidential election was the first time I could vote. I've grown up in a red state. My family watches Fox News. I went to a really conservative church. It took a couple years of college to snap me out of it. I'm pretty moderate now. It's a microcosm of thinking and hate where you have to keep making excuses and justifying his actions to continue to be sane. That's where the alternative news networks come into play. They make people think they're the victims. That the liberals and George Soros are trying to take our guns and disrespect our flag. All protesters are rioters, etc. That's such a messed up thing. One of the world's most powerful men trolling, and that's a good thing. My breaking point was the tweets to Michigan and Virginia stating they were coming for their guns during the primaries, or something similar. You simply shouldn't purposefully turn your own citizens against each other. That really scared me. Meanwhile he actually said take the guns first, go through due process second, referring to confiscating guns from people who are suspected of being potential criminals, but have not committed any crime. What an insane violation of rights, and these Second Amendment people still drool over him, like he's some great champion. Barack Obama was certainly not a fan of the Second Amendment, but he never considered anything so insane. The exact thing that gun owners feared, baselessly, cops coming to their doors demanding their guns, was actually advocated by Donald Trump on video. Of course, his supporters will claim that he misspoke, or that he was joking. Edit. Here's a source. He says on video that he supports taking guns from someone suspected of having violent tendencies. No conviction, no arrest, no court trial. The government could take guns from anyone they don't like with a policy like that. Washington Post. I used to be a Republican up until a few months after the last election. The breaking point for me was how hateful Trump supporters became. They would take the bold things he would say and use them to insult anyone who didn't agree with Trump or his ways. I just could not stand to be associated with so much hate. That and Trump is ducking insane. But his supporters just kind of brush that stuff under the rug because, well, they're Republican, so they have to accept him. I don't believe it should be that way. If someone isn't doing the right thing, you shouldn't just be okay with it, because that's your political belief. But such is the way a lot of things are in America. I've chosen to just not associate with a political party anymore. Edit. I just want to state that I was aware of the hatred leading up to the 2016 elections. One of the reasons I'm no longer Republican is because I realized the error in my decision. I'm sorry I did not make the decision I did until after the election. My only excuse is prior ignorance and close-mindedness. And yes, I will be voting. My dad has repeatedly said that the thing that upsets him, he's a lifelong Republican, the most is not Trump, it's that the Republican Party didn't stand up to him. As he says, they had an opportunity to say, this is what we believe in, this is what is important to us, and we are going to stand by that, even against someone who purports to be one of us. And instead so many of them just jumped on board. Broadly gestures at everything / even as an Australian, I agree. The fact he appointed a royal exec to be the head of the EPA, so it could be dismantled, and that he lies constantly, I left the gop. Yes, Goproot was a real sack of cheese. Edit. It's. Well, I just changed my affiliation 2 weeks ago, but had been a Republican since I first registered 25 years ago, when he had so many people removed from their jobs and his team because they came out and said something he didn't agree with. No one expects the president to know everything. You are supposed to find the best people to get you the information needed. The problem is that Trump honestly thinks he knows everything because he's a lunatic and he clearly knows very little about anything of consequence to the presidency. It took me less than 6 months after he was inaugurated before I realized I made a huge mistake in voting for Trump. Just the way he handled himself, the people around him, those different from him, and his immediate lying made me realize that he is not mentally well. I should have seen the signs with the grab them by the pussy reveal, but at the time I was a Republican and wanted to stick with the party vote. Trump and his bootlicking army of sycophants have caused me to switch my political affiliations because I can't be a part of a political party that marginalizes non-white people and does everything in its power to destroy the environment and dissuade immigration. And please don't bring up your Democrats founded the Klan bullshit. That was over 200 years ago, and the racial perspectives of the Democratic and Republican parties have reversed. It is my fervent hope that the House stays blue, the Senate turns blue, and Trump is defeated. Most of all, I want to see Trump being led away in handcuffs for the crimes has committed before and during his presidency. Addendum, him posting an addition to the message above in response to all the people who have rightfully pointed out that the Republican Party has been doing for many years and administrations the same things I stated I dislike about Trump. I fully admit that I did not pay as close attention as I should have to those Republican administrations and politicians prior to Trump being elected. I believe in small government, am a gun owner, and while I don't stand steadfastly against it, am not really in favor of abortion, although that conflicts with my belief that women should have the right to govern their own bodies, and that they should have equal pay for equal work. I believe in the work ethics of immigrants, and I believe it is wrong to discriminate against any race, religion, or culture. However, I wasn't always like this. I'm 64 years old, and throughout my formative and early adult years, I lived in an environment that saw non-white people as inferior. I also spent some time in the military, where racism was very prevalent despite the large percentages of minorities in service to America. As I mentioned in a previous post, my daughter, who is now in her 20s, was very liberal and still is, and she would call me out on things I would say. It took a long time to come around to changing my perspectives, but it is literally the only thing that I thank Trump for because he was and is so blatant with his words and actions against non-white people. I was able to see parts of myself in him, and I didn't like it. What really helped me understand the black perspective was viewing Ava DuVernay's documentary 13th. That really opened my eyes to the institutional and systemic racism that black people for so long have endured. It completely changed my opinion and made me understand why the black population is rightfully angry. It made me angry too, and that anger was also felt for the persecution that Trump committed against Hispanics, Muslims, in other groups he views as a threat. I hope this satisfies the statements that were made about why it took so long for me to turn against the Republican Party. Update: for some reason my Reddit account has been permanently suspended. This is the only way I can let you all know I appreciate the kind comments. It must have been hard. I've known a lot of people who have switched parties. Thank you for looking beyond party. I'm really hoping Trump gets taken out of the WH in cuffs too. I draw the line at the president wanting the police and military to shoot his own citizens. You know how we defended the Second Amendment during those gun control arguments? We wanted our guns for this exact situation, remember? I was never a Trump supporter. However, this is exactly where I expected to see a big break with his supporters, and when I didn't, it was shocking. 2020 / It's literally making me miss Obama, who I really opposed on a policy level. The grace and kindness he displayed is oh so necessary right now, and it's nowhere to be found in the current administration. On a somewhat policy level, it started with coronavirus. Magical thinking and daily happy talk when people who were following the virus closely knew it was going to become a major issue. Edit, added / to avoid a list. I really like comments like this. Republican, Democrat. Honestly, I don't think it's too much to ask to just have a leader to look up to that is setting a good example and a beacon of light for the people. There are too many things to list. Everything he has accomplished in his presidency comes with a huge asterisk next to it. He repealed Obamacare, but in reality he just replaced it with his own chistier version. His tax reform just leads to more deficit spending. His trade war took money out of my pocket, and the farmers who were supposed to benefit had to get bailed out. His stupid wall that never got built, good riddance. His blatant disregard for legitimate risks to election security, foreign meddling, not mail-in ballots. His lack of response to coronavirus, followed by his inability to respond to coronavirus. and the several racially charged issues that have plagued his presidency are just a cherry on top. I used to consider myself a conservative, but I don't even want to be in the same room with those willingly ignorant pricks anymore. I can't go on the internet without becoming irrationally angry at the stupidity that I hear from his mindless drones. At this point, I consider myself aggressively moderate. Don't try to pull me to either side of the aisle. I'm just going to hunker down here with my reuters and app news and fact check the chiz out of everything. Come at me. I have independent and reputable sources. I'm ripped. I love this comment simply because you actually took the time to criticize his chiz-tea policies rather than just commenting on his chiz-tea personality or his chiz-tea tweets or his chiz-tea public comments like most people have. He's not just a terrible person, he's a terrible public official. I supported him in 2016 fully. Slowly started saying things like "has good but immature," which turned into "he just needs to keep his mouth shut then he'll be fine," which turned into "I like his policies, but not quite him." So on and so on. I'm not really sure when I went from liking him to not, but I can now say I want him out and regret ever giving him my support. My dad is currently somewhere in between keep his mouth shut and policies, but not him, and I really hope he gets away completely. I don't care if he stays conservative/Republican, even though we will still probably fight about politics, but over the last 4 years I have watched him go from a well-rounded thoughtful person who considered things from all sides to a hateful troll who parrots whatever Ben Shapiro spouts and watches wrecked lib compilations on YouTube. It was a tough point of time in my life, and the idea of MAGA swept me off my feet and made me vote for him. Since then, though, America has been made anything other than great. He has just made things better for himself and worse for every other American. Let me correct a tiny little detail. He has just made things better for himself and his rich friends, tax cuts and stuff, and worse for every American. In addition to this, for all of you commenting, please go out and vote at the next election and help someone else vote. There were so many early on, so goddamn many, but something that upsets me deeply to my core to this day was the separation of children, while also deporting a number of the parents to random parts of South America without telling them where they're going, for most of them to die within the first few months of being, in some cases literally blindfolded and dropped off. There are 2 to 7-year-olds then and right now who don't know what the duck is going on or where their parents are, only for most of them to already be dead right now or never seen again. It's one of the most ducked up things I think that has ever happened under an American administration. I know our country has done a lot and a lot worse, but he cemented himself as one of the worst and most evil presidents in our history so far by playing such a key, pivotal role in that. Edit 1. Justin Nielsen can go duck herself. Edit 2. This was my first award and the most upvotes I've gotten on a single comment. I have a lot to say about this, but I'm just sorry to all of humanity. The things we do to each other. Just keep faith, everyone. We will get through this, and the world one day will simply be a better place. Keep fighting the good fight and be kind to your neighbor. It pays off in the end. Those children will suffer the impacts of that trauma for the rest of their lives. I have a 2-year-old and the pointless cruelty of those policies is just beyond words for me. The childish name calling of everyone he doesn't like. A grown-up, and especially the president, should not act like that. I can also do without constantly hearing him talk about how great he is in third person. He's been doing this since his run in 2016. Why is it different now? Edit. In case it's not clear, I'm not insulting or belittling ethicus with this. It's an actual question, as in why is it different now, not hey you're Eric. Lol. I was actually asking why is it different now vs then, considering it's not new. He was doing this during his primaries, during his run, and basically since the beginning of his life. So what's changed that now it's a problem? Stop being offended for ethicus and let him/her answer. I actually officially left the Republican Party because Trump was elected. Any party that can vote in that man cannot represent me. My mother-in-law is a 68-year-old woman who was a lifelong Republican until Trump became the nominee. At that point, she completely lost faith in the Republican Party and said she would never give them another vote for the rest of her life because of that. Home Alone 2, Lost in New York. It's a grid system methodica. Annoying non-stop Twitter ads, egomaniac, lack of empathy, divide and conquer mentality, tyrannical having to check the news neurotically to see what current bullshit he is stirring up. White House turnover 8. Front door is now a revolving door. Anyone that gets excited to work with/for him does, and then goes running screaming, resignation, and then says has imbalanced, unethical, conniving, and divisive. All of his friends are either doing time in prison, too many to list, or dead. Epstein. He was just inspecting the underground bunker. Cowardly and awkward. Walk to the DC church, surrounded by police, SWAT, USSS, and snipers, to hold the Bible like a dinner menu. He doesn't give two chizzes about religion. I live near him. What he said about POW John McCain. He likes people who don't get caught. Punch him in the face. He'll pay your legal fees. We've gotten a good picture now about exactly how this dude rolls, and it is not good. When the country is going to hell in a handbasket and we need to hear from our leader, presidential address, has absent or says something super ducked up on Twitter to make the situation worse. We desperately need someone a lot more emotionally and mentally mature to handle the economy, nurture peaceful and strong foreign relations and policies, and remind us, the citizens of the United States of America, that we are united and all in this together, to make this the fantastic and strong nation that it is. He has made a mockery of the US. Unacceptable. I didn't vote for either dipch's last election. It was like voting for Dumb or Dumber. Palm Beach, registered independent MPA. I didn't want to, thought the Democrats all looked ridiculous, but now voting forbidden. Done with Trump. The White House is 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue, but I'm sure the person living at 1400 is probably an egomaniac as well. Recently when he threatened to shoot looters. I don't support the looting, it's just that the punishment shouldn't be death. Edit. Also when he said that the 75-year-old man that was pushed down was actually Antifa. Imagine waking up in the IQ and the president of the United States made a tweet about you being Antifa when you're just a 75-year-old man currently fighting cancer that has been volunteering, supporting his community, and protesting for rights for a large part of his life. That would be something else. Old people fall, and they fall hard and easily. TBH, I was never a Trump supporter, but I had felt that the guy was not as bad as the media portrayed him, and was somewhat redeemable. I was essentially an enlightened centrist. Then he betrayed the Kurds. Those people fought and died alongside US soldiers, and Trump just stepped aside and let them be slaughtered, so he won't defend Turkey. I can tolerate an immature a-hole. I cannot tolerate a traitor. Edit. Thanks for the golds. Edit too. Considering that I'm not a doctor, nurse, or any kind of healthcare worker, I don't think I deserve a healthcare hero award. That was the final nail in the coffin for me, especially when he was making fun of the whole situation at his god-awful rallies. It showed what an evil, immoral, childish dastard he is. That man has no heart. Not saying that previous presidents have not abandoned allies or supported the wrong side in conflicts, but most of the time this was because there was something bigger at stake. But the abandoning of the Kurds purely because he thought that the US troop deployment cost too much money, with absolutely no regards for the geopolitical and diplomatic implications, it proved that Trump is too stupid, too childish, and too morally impaired to be president. I was also so disappointed with all those MAGA holes suddenly being against the Kurds and supporting this decision, while being completely fine with US troops fleeing their positions and allowing their allies to be slaughtered. They hated Obama because he was too weak, while Americans under Trump had to bomb their own base to prevent it from falling into the Turkish-backed jihadist hands. Trump has seriously compromised America's credibility on the world stage and has made it the laughingstock of the world. Not a single leader takes him seriously. When I realized I'm an independent thinker and don't have to support everything my parents do, a really important but hard lesson. Blindly following anyone's lead when it comes to politics, even your parents, is almost never a good idea. Good for you. In 2016, when he demonstrated beyond a shadow of a doubt that he completely lacked any moral fabric by attempting to disparage McCain's military record because he was captured. I don't understand why this wasn't more of a deal breaker. I'm not at all pro-military nor Republican, but even I found those comments to be utterly unbearable. I just wish someone had lost it at the table and sharply said, "You shut the duck up about that man." Of course there were more things about him and his policies, but that was the point when I looked at the Republicans and Fox in disbelief. Like, really? You just gonna take it up there with a loving smile? Whatever. I want Bernie, but I'll take Biden or a potato, if it comes to it. Edit, a missing word. Stripping wildlife and environmental protections. Goodbye, investment growth. We had a good run. I'll miss you. It really pissed me off when like 2 days ago he made cub hunting legal in Alaska. Like, what in the goddamn duck? Not only is that ducking horrible, but I feel like changing hunting regulations is not exactly what a president should be focusing on with everything else going on right now. I'm a registered Republican and voted for Hillary last time. Will vote for Biden this time. I think Trump is a ducking monster. The breaking point in 2016 was either the Mexico sending bad people comments or the grab them by the pussy comments. Say what you want about prior Republican nominees, but Romney, McCain, and neither Bush would ever say/do that sort of chiz. Bush even did an interview in Spanish on Telemundo, for God's sake. John McCain had plenty of issues, but when he defended Obama from that racist lady at his rally, he earned my respect. Suppose we hit the body with a tremendous light. To be fair, launching people into the sun would be effective at both treating and preventing coronavirus infection. I was a lifelong Republican until Trump was nominated in the primaries last time. I couldn't believe my party could support a man like that. I didn't vote for him last time, but I voted Libertarian. As much as I hate contributing to a two-party system, I will not throw my vote away again this time. Honestly though, I've done a lot of soul searching in the last 4 years and I 100% do not align with Republican Party values anymore. I don't care who they put in that position. They're dead to me, and they only have themselves to blame. I voted all blue in the midterm elections for the first time in my life, and I will be in November too. I was the same way. Voted for Romney back in 2012. Then Trump won the primaries. I always considered myself more libertarian, more due to upbringing than actual morals. I watched Trump throw his insane rallies with homophobic, racist, xenophobic, sexist speeches. How could I support a candidate who said he could grab them by the pussy? Then I watched people I once respected go from criticizing Trump to supporting him unequivocally in the span of a week. I used to respect Lindsey Graham, especially after the whole iPhone backdoor debacle. He went from believing that Apple could develop a system to break into any iPhone with zero risk to normal consumers to realizing how dumb that was by talking to experts. I watched Ted Cruz lick the a-hole of the man who insulted his wife on national television. And it just got worse as I watched more hypocrisy. I didn't understand how a two-time divorcee could be for traditional marriage. I didn't understand how a draft dodger who insulted parents of a dead soldier and made fun of a war hero could stand for the military. He's nothing more than a spoiled child who hates everyone who isn't white and rich. It woke me up. I realized that I didn't have conservative values at all. I don't support more corporate oligarchies. I don't support bankrupting the poor so they can get medical care. I don't support robbing the poor of a living wage to give to the billionaires. I want to live in a society where everyone is educated, because holy shiz are there some dumber people in this country. I mean FFS. Protesting a virus because you want a haircut is okay, but protesting the wrongful deaths of thousands of black Americans is shameful. Conservatives look down on education because an uneducated population has kept them in power. How many times have you heard that universities are breeding ground for liberals? It can't possibly be that educated people vote in their society's best interest based on facts. Nope, has to be brainwashing. My parents are conservative, and not even my abusive childhood has driven such a wall between us as this presidency. I realized how stupid and bigoted they are. How they could never be a part of my family. It drives me crazy that they don't see or are willfully ignoring what he has done to our country. We used to be a superpower and now Canada is blocking us from crossing the border. His unprofessional attitude toward General James Mattis was my turning point. The man is a military genius and a true patriot. It's amazing watching the mental gymnastics that people are doing now. saying he wasn't a good general anyway. With other points and such. I don't know why people go through such great lengths to defend Trump, even turning on the other people they once admired. A relative of mine messaged me about a week after the George Floyd protests had been going to inform me that she had seen a post I made online about it, and it moved her to tears. She told me she was no longer supporting Trump because he did not once speak out about police brutality and everything happening. I believe it is the fact that when she saw George Floyd's death she saw her black family members in his place and realized she could no longer support someone who would let that happen. As much as I love her views have in the past been problematic and kind of racist, which hurt me. It was a shock to me that she flipped so suddenly considering how awful he has been in the past. But I think when things become personal and threaten your family, it can be the one thing that shocks you into seeing the reality of things. It was a shock to me that she flipped so suddenly considering how awful he has been in the past. But I think when things become personal and threaten your family, it can be the one thing that shocks you into seeing the reality of things. I also doubt that she internally flipped that suddenly. She had probably been struggling with a lot of the things she had seen earlier, but felt like she could justify them, though less and less over time, in the big picture. Then one more thing tilts the scales and the entire facade of justifications comes crumbling down, and you realize how much of it there actually was. The final blow was his handling of the coronavirus, putting states at odds with each and the feds over medical supplies. Why can't we know where 500 billion was allocated? What businesses? Also golfing at his places on our dime seems very anti-Republican in action. Compelled to add occasions of mandating all of his Secret Service escorts stay at his resorts and pay full price for high-end rooms with our tax dollars. I used to think I was a Republican. This administration made me realize I was not educated on politics at all. If I had to pick one thing that was truly eye-opening for me, it was the worsening of the kids in cages thing. Edit. It was something I didn't know about until this presidency, and I can't stand the thought of it continuing to happen. The problem is that many people still view the Republican Party as small government, and that attracts a lot of people. In reality, no party owns that monopoly, and this administration showed that. If Obama had called the military to kick out protesters, we would have seen an instant impeachment. Moments that I'm surprised aren't on here. Very fine people on both sides. After the Charlottesville neo-Nazi rally, kids in cages Mueller's investigation, but I'm not complaining. The train that arrives late still arrives either. Kids in cages has since become a top comment, which is great. At the time I had scrolled through near to the bottom and nada. But I'm not complaining. The train that arrives late still arrives, this right here. At this point, I'll take anyone I can get. If someone stopped supporting Trump because he gave the Clemson team McDonald's instead of Wendy's, I'll take it. If someone stopped supporting Trump because he didn't reply to their birthday party invitation, I'll take it. If it's because a pansexual otter came to them during an LSD trip and told them to not vote Trump, I'll take it. Also, for what it's worth, I have a friend whose breaking point was very fine people. The POTUS is someone we are supposed to look up to. Who can possibly look up to that guy? My ducking dad. Republican here was an ever Trump plus never Cruz, supported Kasich in primary in 2016, though I thought Trump wouldn't be able to cause any real damage and Hillary was Satan incarnate. Voted for Johnson last time, but gonna have to suck it up and vote Biden this time around in hopes of surely getting him out. Plenty of us knew he was worthless going in, but I think this time has worked hard enough to lose a lot of moderate Republicans. Name dropping George ducking Floyd while talking about economic growth. This quote, hopefully George is looking down right now and saying this is a great thing that's happening for our country. It's a great day for him. It's a great day for everybody. This is a great day for everybody. This is a great day in terms of equality. It's really what our constitution requires, and it's what our country is all about. I couldn't even comprehend how he had strung those words together. He has said so many awful things, but saying it is a great day for a man murdered by police officers because a few people had gone back to work is up there. I was born into a very conservative family, raised right-wing Republican my whole life. As a young adult I followed suit. I never gave much thought to political alignment, just checked the R box and moved along. However, this is different. As I have gotten older I have gained a significant value for human life. Unfortunately my Democrat brothers and sisters tend to care a little more about fringe groups. So there you have it. They'll get my vote this year. Honestly, Trump and Biden are both creepers. Either one of them could be hit by a truck and I wouldn't really care. However, if Biden wins there's a greater potential for peace. I just want to go to work and make a paycheck and come with my family. I'm over all the drama. So I'll vote for Biden just to end the media sensation and far left anger. I'm just so over all of it. I feel like you are literally describing me and my life. 2020 I retain my political leanings. I'm a fiscal conservative with compassion for my fellow citizens. I consider myself an independent and functionally I have been what I would consider a moderate conservative. Still am. I value differences of opinion and believe that our collective ideologies make us stronger. We don't need to be a nation of only liberals or conservatives, of only socialists or capitalists, of only whites or Hispanics or Asians or blacks. I believe now and always have believed that the diversity of Americans makes us stronger, gives us more answers, allows us to come to greater stability in our society. We have more to contribute because of our diversity. I have for years watched, with growing concern, the division in our society and our politics. I'm 59 years old, and we seem much more partisan than I remember. It used to be that lawmakers could disagree civilly and debate vigorously while maintaining respect and the ability to work together. Now it seems like we have a culture of opinionated my way or the highway. When we encounter this in our various neighborhoods, we have coined a name for this kind of individual, a Karen. This year, starting with the evolving COVID pandemic and then spilling into and snowballing with the response of our public servants to the civil rights protests, I have seen a complete lack of diplomacy and leadership. At this moment in time, what our nation needs most desperately is not politics, but the ability to lead. We are desperate for a leader to settle down the national emotion, to acknowledge the legitimacy of BLM, to lead us in introspection, and to lead us forward in constructive ways, to unite people of all races, cultures, and politics. What we have is a Karen who gets in our face, self-righteously shouts at us, intimidates, and refuses to listen. Our President Karen has systematically divided us when we need most desperately to be unified. He has riled us up when we have needed settling down. He has blustered when we needed introspection, and has threatened when we needed leadership. The saddest thing is that our country right now is experiencing the greatest civil rights renaissance of my generation. This would be much less painful with leadership, but it is going to happen anyway because it is the right thing to do. Karen has mismanaged the office of president. He has utterly failed to lead, and he will lose the election this fall by historic and unprecedented margins. We have 6 months to endure President Karen. The good thing is, look around. People are uniting in amazing ways anyway. I believe the vast majority of Americans are behind BLM and civil rights with equal protection under the law. I believe peaceful discourse on these issues is up to us. It certainly isn't going to be helped along by President Karen. Luckily, we the people have that ability in us, even if President Karen does not. Edit. Thank you very much for the upvotes, awards, and the kind comments. If you read through the comments, you will see positive thoughts from both sides of the aisle, which very much is an encouragement to me, and supports the idea that people with differing views and ideas can still care about issues, while retaining their respect for each other, acknowledging their collective wisdom, and celebrating their common ground. Pay attention, Mr. President. What a phenomenal read. I'm sure I would disagree with many of your political opinions, but I have utmost respect for you due to the quality of writing in this post as well as the socio-political insight you provide here. Thank you for standing by the BLM movement and being conscious of the horrible policies and actions of Karen in chief. I supported him in 2016 as he was the anti-establishment candidate. I didn't look too much into the things he did/supported. I just knew that he wasn't mainstream, so therefore he must be good. Turns out that was wrong as duck. I regretted it not too long after he was sworn in. I believe my breaking point was more of a cumulative thing. It didn't really happen all at once, but seeing his bulges over the course of his presidency, this year I became significantly more politically active and will be voting for Biden. As I like to put it, smashing the system is only worthwhile if you have something better to replace it. Trump just wants to smash the system and leave it in pieces while he takes the money. Positive reform would be best, but failing that, the returns of baseline competence and integrity would be more than enough. I was never going to vote for Trump, but my breaking point was clearing the streets to march to the church for his photo opus. I will vote for a Democrat president this election, a first in my lifetime. As an Episcopalian on state orders to help with the protests, reading the events at St. John's left me with a fury that I hadn't felt before in my life. His foreign policy in relation to Turkey. He is propping up a brutal Islamist dictator dreaming of reviving the Ottoman Empire by looking the other way whilst Turkey invaded the sovereignty of Greece, Cyprus, and Armenia. When Erdogan visited him last year in DC, I protested. Support for that man is equivalent to war crimes, especially against innocents in northern Syria. I mean, TBH, his entire foreign policy is a joke. When Mattis and Tillerson left, we knew it was gonna get bad. But it got really bad. Edit, this blew up, so I'm going to make some things clear. 1. I'm from America, New York City. Went to college abroad so picked up some British words. Hence whilst. 2. I'm not only criticizing Erdogan, but the Turkish state in its current incarnation that helped organize oil transport out of Syria to help ISIS, still illegally occupies half of Cyprus, refuses to admit genocide, threatens Greek islands with invasion, and keeps its border shut with Armenia to help Azerbaijan economically dominate Armenia, while he let Erdogan's thugs assault American protesters on American soil, and they got away with it. I voted third party last time because I couldn't bring myself to do either, although I see now that I should have just sucked it up and voted for Clinton. I will be voting Biden this time around. However, I won't really identify as a Republican, just as someone who also thinks the neoliberal establishment is harmful to workers and our relationship with the government. Trump will never be the proper answer to combat the neoliberals, no matter how much he brands himself as a political outsider to an obviously rigged system. It's up to the people to make the small adjustments to ensure that we can self-liberate and not have this kind of demagoguery ever again. Think you've actually described how most of us feel. I just didn't like Clinton. Sure gone and ducked up though. He doesn't care about anyone, just himself. Pre-impeachment I was never all that angry. I never voted for him to begin with, and I wasn't planning to this year either. I did vote for Mitt Romney in 2016 and 2018 because I just like most of the work he does for my state, despite other things. I was surprised by his vote to impeach, and even impressed in a way. I knew he had committed career suicide by doing this, but the backlash he got stateside and from the Trump administration as well as the Republican Party as a whole was disgusting to me. When Mitt Romney was potentially exposed to COVID, and Trump sarcastically said, "Gee, that's too bad," all but expressing how little he cared if my representative lived or died. That was it. The president is dead to me until a new one is elected. Duck Trump. I disagree with Romney committing career suicide. I think he was able to vote for impeachment because he wouldn't get voted out over it. I'm not from Utah or Mormon, but I don't think the LDS church is going to turn against him. When he geared a bunch of innocent protesters with tears to get a picture of him holding a Bible. If it wasn't for how ducked up that whole thing was, it would have been hilarious. Hell, it still was. The way he held the Bible up, like has never held a book before. And is that your Bible? It's a Bible. I can't believe he geared and shot rubber bullets at peaceful protesters and ducking members of the church including the preacher, just for that bizarre photo opus. I've always been a moderate conservative and consider myself Republican. Up until now, I've been apathetic about politics, much to my husband's dismay, as he loves talking politics. I was too busy with my kids the last 7 years to pay attention to how far right the right has gone. I knew Trump did bad things, but didn't have the mental energy to dig into it. Then, I got deeply sucked into reading and informing myself about the spread of the coronavirus when it started in Asia. Trump did one bad thing after the next, crippling our response and confusing the public. This resulted in a country divided when it should have been united against the virus. It all got my attention and enraged me. Finally, I saw the petty and selfish things Trump has been doing. The pandemic has really shown everyone's true colors. Then George Floyd was murdered, and peaceful protests were met with more brutality. Trump encouraged the violence and orchestrated a brutal unconstitutional clearing of peaceful protesters to get a photo opus. That was the last straw. I started to look into Joe Biden. I'm no Biden supporter and never paid much attention to him. I also heard rumors of his negatives: old, creepy, senile, and makes tons of gaffes. Compare this to what damage Trump has done in the last 6 months. I'll take the creepy, rambling grandpa. Then I watched his interview by Trevor Noah. Color me surprised. He's quite eloquent and way more human than Trump, who acts like a toddler. Biden has got my vote. My fundamental beliefs haven't changed, but the Republican Party has devolved and is led by a narcissistic, petty, racist, childish coward. We cannot have 4 more years of this. This is lovely, thank you. I think many people who are very invested in politics are unable to understand how someone can go without paying attention to them, but the fact of the matter is that life often gets in the way. Kids, putting food on the table, all the demands adult life makes of us. I admit I was once one of those who both had disdain for people who didn't follow politics and who mocked Fox News viewers. Unfortunately, I wasn't putting myself in others' shoes, and I regret that. Just because I have time to invest in researching sources and positions and platforms doesn't mean everyone does. And when a person grows up around people who use one source for information, they tend to use that same source, even if the information it offers is misleading or wrong. I don't like many politicians of any party because it takes a certain level of self-involvement and narcissism to go into politics, but Republicans have increasingly shown that their only concern is enriching themselves and their corporate buddies, not serving their constituents. I hope as unrest continues that politicians of every affiliation will listen more to the people on the street, not the people on K Street or Wall Street. Thank you for sharing your story. I'm a registered Republican, and I never voted for Trump because he's an awful and untrustworthy person. While I consider myself conservative, Trump's presidency and his catering to the extremists on the right have forced reasonable Republicans like myself to be viewed as moderates. That may be true. On the flip side, my parents formally switched to the Democrat Party. I hesitate to do so because that would prevent me from voting for moderate Republicans in the primaries. If everyone switches to the Democrat Party, only extremists will be left during the primaries and only extremist candidates will be chosen to run on the Republican tickets from now till forever. Edit. I think many people in this country woefully underestimate the power of a primary election. So few people vote in them. If you were to organize enough people to participate, you could easily change the political landscape overnight. If it makes you feel better, many moderate Democrats are no different than moderate Republicans, except they support abortion and gay marriage. Blue Dog Dem/New Democrats commonly argue for less taxes and spending, while advocating a balanced budget. They're effective center politicians who support gay/women's rights. That tweet he made hating on Costco. I'm like Methodika, Costco is an American national treasure. Don't even outside of America, Costco is a treasure. Even on normal weekends there are crowds waiting out front to get in. The low prices, the large volumes. Oh yeah. Of all the responses, I'm so surprised it's not the kids being raped in cages at the border, and him not denouncing/putting a stop to that. Like all this other tiny petty cheese people are like, nah, not for the president. But kids getting raped in cages, meh, it's still okay. Him pardoning Arpaio? I didn't vote for him, but I don't understand why I could stand in the middle of 5th Avenue and shoot somebody and I wouldn't lose any voters wasn't the end. The idea of supporting a political leader who jokes that he could murder someone and still be adored by the American people makes me nauseous. NPR. Speaking of shooting, don't forget this little gem. I like taking guns away early, Trump said. Take the guns first, go through due process second. I'm not gonna lie, I'm infuriated by how many of these answers are obvious examples of his worst personality traits and the very predictable results of his egregious leadership style, both of which were very publicly documented prior to the election, and in some cases, flaunted as positives by his campaign in 2016 for some insane reason. I was just about to say the same thing. He is doing exactly what he was doing in the campaign trail. Everybody here thought that somehow, when he became president, he was going to change. Gtfo. Name calling. He did that in the campaign trail. Not caring about anyone else but himself. He did that too. Hell, his freaking acceptance speech was "I alone can fix it." What did they think it was going to happen? I feel you. Trust me, I feel you. No affiliation of any political gangs here. Just wanted to say how surprised I am to not see anyone talking about how, since the beginning of his campaign, he has been trying to get people to think of the news as the enemy, to not know what is true and what is false. That is straight out of Orwell's 1984, based on his studies of Stalin and Hitler. Seems a little more important than how he handled a specific issue. Trump ducking the farmers over with tariffs and regulations. Speaking on behalf of my Midwest farming family, I don't think most Democrats know nor care how corrupt the EPA is. Yes, they do a lot of protection of species, but they also take big industrial farm bribes in exchange for leaving them alone, like a thug ring offering neighborhood protection. During Democratic presidencies, these EPA thugs outright harrow or shut down smaller farms for minor infractions that bigger farms are doing, and me. So that's one of the reasons there are Republicans today. They feel better represented by Republicans to make a meager living, where Democrat-led EPA thugs otherwise try to shut them down for not paying their dues. Still, many of my family will concede voting for Biden this year because he's old enough he might actually remember America is mostly fed by Midwestern farmers. Trump ducking the farmers over with tariffs and regulations, and them blaming Canada for it. His Twitter presence. You shouldn't vote based on party. You should vote based on the person. Parties shouldn't even be legal. Imagine if when you went to the voting booth, you voted on policy. There would be like 10 questions, and in the end it would be surprise. You're actually a socialist and cast your vote for Lillian Jones. Things would get better fast. I'm an independent, but I voted for Trump over Hillary last election. And I voted for Obama in the 2 prior elections. Sometime last week I realized that I didn't want him as president for the next 4 years. The breaking point for me is that has just really a huge hole. I don't even like Joe Biden, and I think EW has a terrible pick to run against Trump. But here we are. And Biden will most likely get my vote next November. I'm not an American, so I have no dog in this fight, but I'm really curious. Not judging at all. How did you go from Obama to Trump? I was 19 in 2016. I didn't like Trump originally, but I would taken him over Hillary. I actually wrote in Ted Cruz cause I figured he'd vote for someone I thought was proper and principled, not a flip-flopping a-hole like Trump. As his term went on, I became more and more defending of him, because everything was made to be left vs right. Looking back, I almost feel brainwashed and corrupted. The past month woke me up. His comments on using the military were awful. His gagging of peaceful protesters was a huge snap for me. His recent actions with transgender healthcare even further proved how bad he is. Since this month started, I've looked back and realized how awful has been. He's an a-hole who mocks people. He has no principle. Has completely ruined what I thought was my party. I was always a big Republican. I even considered office one day, but I'm in the process of going independent because I'm so disgusted with the party. No one stood up to him after his comments. 4 years Republicans have pushed themselves as the party of free speech, then try to justify denying that right and the right to assembly. I still hold some right-wing views, but I won't support him, anyone who does, and the GOP, until they fix themselves. They let a hateful idiot with no actual substance take over their party and are completely submissive to whatever he commands. Ducking thank you for everything, honestly, but also for acknowledging his attacks on trans healthcare. He's allowing healthcare providers to refuse healthcare to trans patients. People are freaking out. BC has doing this during Pride Month, but it's also during a ducking pandemic. Even if you don't personally agree with transitioning, that doesn't magically make trans people less human. Again, thank you for acknowledging the issues and changing your views for the better. You're awesome. I gave up on the Republican Party a long time ago. I just didn't want Clinton, but I also didn't want Trump to begin with. Honestly, I hate both parties equally. If only there was a third option in which the option read as, if both candidates suck, then a new election for different candidates is needed. A huge part of the solution is changing how we vote. We need the ability to elect a third party. Equal edit. Apparently it wasn't clear. When I said we need to change how we vote, I mean literally how. As in, the process. I'm 42 and this will be the first time I have not voted for the Republican candidate for president. I vote other parties for other offices frequently, but never before president. For me, the biggest part of the presidency has been economics. But climate change is becoming a bigger breaking point for me. I cold vote in 2016, but if I cold, it would have been for Trump. I didn't like Hillary and thought that maybe Trump could bring a new perspective and actually make some change. I gave him some respect after he was elected, but soon realized that he wasn't suited for office. After all the racial tensions and issues in the Middle East that were brewing at the end of Obama's presidency, the nation needed an actual leader, not whatever Trumpies. While I feel that Biden isn't the best speaker and stumbles a lot, I feel that he can have the respect of people on both sides of the aisle. At this point I don't care what policies he puts in place, just as long as they don't make it hard or impossible for me to get a job and survive after I graduate from college. Thought that maybe Trump could bring a new perspective and actually make some change. I mean, he did bring some changes, just not the ones we were looking for. My turning point as a Republican was how he mocked the late Senator John McCain. How he labeled him a non-hero because he was captured. I was a strong supporter of McCain throughout his term in the Senate and during his attempt to capture presidency. He was a very honorable man and spoke from his heart. And to hear President Trump mock him and say all of those things was really the tipping point. No offense to my fellow Republicans, but the fact is most of our senates had served in the armed forces without using a medical excuse. Hell, when I joined, being flat-footed is considered a disqualification, and I had to prove why it doesn't bother me to the military entry processing station. So yeah, that was the turning point for me. I fell for the propaganda during the last cycle. I knew as a California voter that if I casted a protest vote for Gary Johnson it probably wouldn't matter. I had been brought up hearing all kinds of horrible chiz about Hillary, and I honestly thought that Trump had a zero chance of winning. I cast my lame ducking I'm here to protest vote for Johnson and didn't expect the remainder of the evening. I deeply regret my decision. I thought it was a joke. I regret what has happened to our country and will do everything to make sure it never happens again. There are some Republicans who never voted for him in the first place. He is a fake conservative. It's better to define him psychologically than politically. Just view him and his policies as a predictable and direct result of being a malignant narcissist. The moment he called illegal immigrants rapists. I'm sorry, but I don't support any kind of racism. I always thought he was a ducking lunatic. I may be generally conservative on my beliefs, but I'm not a moron. I'm not loyal to a singular party. If the Democrats were to try passing a bill I believe in, I'll vote for it. And if the Republicans say something stupid, I'm not gonna jump in and dismiss it. Bailing out undeserving businesses instead of the real hard-working Americans affected by the pandemic. His general response to the BLM movement, his disgusting comments about innocent people who were victims of police brutality, calling them Antifa plants, and especially him threatening to use the military against American citizens to stop the protests. My father is a Republic Trump supporter with a trans not straight kid, and me, a very open pansexual. My mom and I are Democrats. I DK about my brother. Now, to say I want to cry because my father values politics over his ducking children's lives and safety, now that ducking hurts. I know this isn't answering the question, but I just have to put this out there because it cuts so deep. I honestly contemplating begging him not to vote, so my parents voted won't cancel each other's out, but my mother's will be valid. I love him, but I want to feel safe because of who I love in America, and I want my brother to too. We see you. We hear you. We love you. I think a good bunch of the answers on this relate back to his Twitter, cause has said and done the stupidest shiz on and out of that Twitter account, but the absolute final straw for me was him trying to take away the rights of LGBT+ people that Obama put in place. Him too young to vote, and my whole family is with Trump or at least Republican. My brother the other day was trying to show me that Trump likes Anne is okay with LGBT+ people. Then I saw he did that, and I'm positive it swayed my political party. Not that I was sure I was even Republican before, because I was basically brainwashed by my family to be Republican, but I can say, if I were old enough to vote, I'd go for anyone but Trump, as long as I knew he'd be good in office. To be honest, I'm a little shocked at how recent most of these breaking points are. This chiz is bad, yeah, but it doesn't really seem more bad than the garbage he's been doing in office for literally years now. It takes time to break will from a cult. Never underestimate it. True Republicans didn't vote for him the first time. A little louder for those in the back. It takes guts to admit when you've been suckered by a con man. Kudos to you all, and congrats on rejoining the sane portion of the population. This is gonna be some r/leopard satema face chizha. It's more like r/Trump grit, but at least they opened their eyes. I respect people who are open-minded and are willing to change and learn from their mistakes. Oh my, you watched until the end? That's fucking awesome, dude. Thanks for watching.